I was like very naked. I was
No.
like, oh shit, it's 3 o'clock. Let me put some clothes on.
We were just chatting on the phone, and she's like, "Okay, I gotta go put some clothes on." And I just started laughing. I was like, "That's my girl." Well, thank you guys so much for being here live. This is E-RYT, who is just amazing and an amazing client as well as friend. And I would even go so far as to say family. And I can't wait to be in Cumberland Gap in physical. I'm always like in body, like, aren't we in a body? And yes, yes, we are. But I
Yeah.
want to in the physical presence. Thank you guys so much for joining us. So we're going to be having like an amazing conversation today, I feel like. And Arya, we are doing this, I've been saying like we're collaborating on this retreat. It's really been this amazing vision of yours, and I'm so honored to be part of it. And I really would love for you to share with people who are watching right now and who will watch this later, what inspired you to offer this retreat? What inspired you to really go down this path with this retreat?
Yeah, that's a great question. I keep trying to get my little light to turn on, and apparently there's a short in it, and it's just a great metaphor. Um, yeah, so I've been in the yoga world for 15 years. I've had a yoga business for 7 years, and then I've been leading retreats. I don't know how long, but for a long time since then. And I've led retreats. I used to live in Charleston, South Carolina, and I've led retreats there. I've led them in Asheville. I've led them in Zion National Park. I almost had a retreat that I like put together and launched in Peru, in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And then I found out I was pregnant, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to be like hopping across the world postpartum. It was like maybe 6 months postpartum, and that happened to be in 2020. So I'm glad I honored the nudge to cancel that. So yeah, I like last year in like just like coming like ready to start to lead things in person again. And I was getting a lot of feedback that it was like people were just like craving, like, and I was craving to like put my hands on a body and hug a person in person. And I've had clients that I've been supporting for like years that are German or in Switzerland, and I've never met them, which is crazy. And yeah, so I was starting to like kind of paint the canvas again. Like I was like, ooh, it'd be cool to go back to Zion, or ooh, it would be cool to maybe do the Smoky Mountains. I was kind of like, our land, we have 46 acres of land here in Cumberland Gap, Tennessee, and I'm from Georgia. And so I was like, might be cool to do like North Georgia, because those are like my home mountains, or maybe it'd be cool to do Smokies. And I was like, our land isn't ready, and our land won't be ready to host people like on the land for a little while. But then, so I was like playing with timelines, and then last November is just everything just like lined up for it to take place in
I
downtown.
remember,
Yeah.
like,
And
we
I
were
was like,
talking shit, and then you were like, "I have this," and boom, boom, boom. In a matter of like 72 hours,
it
you had worked it
was
all.
done.
It was so divinely aligned.
So it was like flow state. And if I am like looking back to like the person I've become since I met this land, like since I was like, we talk about like intimacy with self, we talk about like intimacy in a romantic relationship. But the greatest union of my life has been being in partnership with this land here, and just learning how to like listen to the earth and like serve from like what is coming through the divine channel, not what's coming through my ego. And also like just literally being like willing to just like drop the agenda and drop the expectations and drop like what I thought I knew, or the way I thought things were supposed to go, and just like moment to moment be guided by a force bigger than me. And yeah, so this like call to be in person again, that's part of it. This like call to like share the like intimate community, like there's just something alive in my relationships that I know most people on this planet want. It's like so juicy, it's like soul quenching relationship. And pretty much anyone who's ever come to a retreat before walks away saying it was the deepest sense of community they've ever felt in their life. And many of them become lifetime friends. But I think it's also this other piece of like, I have become like, it almost makes me like teary eyed goosebumps, but I have become the best woman I could be because of this land. And like, I know that every single person that comes here and connects to these mountains and like the vortex that is here will leave, not only feeling like all they're worthy of all their dreams, but like they like actually literally get to have them and just like walk away feeling that they're the best woman they can be in this moment, the best wife they can be, or the best mother they can be, or the best business owner or leader, or whatever that role is, like feeling like I'm not becoming the version of me that I would want to be. I'm not becoming the best version of me, but I
And I'm
am her.
now.
I
And
am
I think
her now.
you just said that because so many of us, when a lot of times when we're doing life, we're planning things out, right? So we have all this future. One of my mentors calls it future worrying. We're like scheduling our worries, which I love because it's like, holy shit, do I really think about it that way? No, consciously, I think that I'm planning, but then if something happens in my life and that plan doesn't go to plan, then I get all kind of like bent out of shape about it, right? So what I love about this particular the language of this retreat is really that we are, as I get gifted to be a part of this, creating a container for consciousness to be fluid, not rigid. And I think a lot of times just hearing that, it's just like hard for people to understand what that actually means because it is an embodied sense of living in this what I call the grace filled vessel, where it's like grace is that source flowing through you in every now moment, as opposed to I'm going to plan these things and manage all the bullshit that gets in the way. And something I always say is do not manage the shit in your life you don't want. That's a waste of your energy, right? Stop trying to manage your stress, manage your anxiety, manage your fear. Let's move through that. So containers like this are so awesome for that because it allows you to get out of that contrast.
Mm.
And we were talking before we went live here, and one of the things we were talking about is you and I. One of our wonderful kismet items is that you and I have this very different idea about contrast or polarity or duality. I hear a lot of times those words used frequently, and in the old paradigm or old matrix, whatever language you like to call it, there's this homogenized narrative that contrast creates expansion. And the thing about that is when that becomes so rooted in the collective unconscious, then you naturally start creating contrast in your own life so that you can feel successful in your growth. And I believe that that's bullshit. I believe that I know I'm a little fiery today about this. So, I believe that that is kind of like straight up BS. You do not have to have this massive contrast in order to have expansion. Those of us that have had contrast in our life, because we were in that, we have some things to clear up in the process of navigating that, right? Some integration is often one of the things that I say. So without getting overly tangential, because I think I could teach for hours on this concept, I'd love to know, Aria, like some of the contrasts you've experienced, because you did say stepping on this land has made a massive difference in really, I believe for you, and especially in working with you, that I've watched you integrate things in ways before that you didn't have the space to be that intimate with yourself. Right. So I'd love to hear a little bit, I think your words for it were the back of the box.
Yeah, I want to drop a little note here that I'm interested too in like what has been going on for you behind the scenes. I mean, I
Yeah.
know to some level, but what's been going on for you behind the scenes over the last year and a half that we've been working together because obviously like there's whether no matter who's the mentor or whether it's like collaborative like partnership, which I think it always should be in mentorship, but no matter like who is receiving the medicine and who is leading the medicine, there's always this beautiful kind of like dual co-creation there. So I would love to like put that
Yes,
there for a
yes.
little bit later.
Earmark. Noted.
Yeah, I mean, as we talked about in our last live, you know, our paths started to come together after a very intense season of death and change and crumbling for both of us. And so my path up until I would say really like I would say the last like 2 years, um, it has been like either like um intense change that then catalyzed my growth, whether it was somebody like getting sick or like a car accident or like I won't go down the rabbit hole of some of the other like more risque stories of me like being naked out in the wild and but there's always some sort of event like almost like a rock bottom type energy that catalyzed a realization or a growth that I had been avoiding. So I would say it's like the feather, the brick, and the semi. You can listen to the
Hmm.
little intuitive whispers, and if you don't, you get the brick in the back of the head, and if you still don't listen, you get the 18-wheeler. So a lot of my like catalysts for change came from the brick in the back of the head or the 18-wheeler. So I would say like that was a level of contrast and polarity. Um, this isn't so much present for me, but it's something, you know, I'm like kind of like an intimacy coach. I'm a business coach. I'm like I do a lot of things inside of that umbrella, but everything is done through the lens of like intimacy and sacred union. And one of the things that I see a lot for my clients and that I see a lot in the like intimacy, romantic relationship conversation world is like polarity as this like feminine masculine like collision. It's almost like this fire and ice type energy in a relationship that creates this like big passion and like you know and I actually don't think that that is like the path towards the healthiest relationship. So I would say for a lot of people it's like this fire and ice dynamic of like hot and cold and hot and cold in relationships. That hasn't been so present for me in my romantic relationship, but I would say I had a fire and ice relationship with money for a long time in my business where I'd be really hot and then really cold and then really flowing and then really not, like this like almost like feast or famine like energy where no matter how much money I made, I couldn't actually fully enjoy it because I would surely manifest the season of time where it felt hard again. So I think the fire and ice energy could show up in romantic relationships. It could show up in relationships with women where there's like this your best friends and you're like you're texting all the time and you're like having sleepovers and whatever your like realm of sisterhood is, and then all of a sudden there's like competition or all of a sudden there's like lingering jealousy or all of a sudden there's this drama. So I guess really all of this is some sort of drama to catalyze a change or some sort of drama to catalyze growth. And we actually tell those stories like the phoenix rising from the ashes, like this is what legitimizes us as leaders or legitimizes our marriage, like we walked through this hard thing so that and now we're this magical whatever. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like
It
there's this
does.
like
And
I remember growing up in the church and it was like the harder you fell from God, the stronger your testimony was. It's like that
more,
type of
more
energy.
you suffer, the more believable you are, because I can see my suffering through the lens of your suffering. And
Right.
it's, you know, I know there are probably some people watching that don't know me, and one of the things that I am a total and complete freaking nerd, and so I spend a lot of my time studying philosophy, different theologies, magic, like I mean, tantra, like all the things. And one of the things that is consistently congruent in all of that is that love is the way; it's the only way, and joy is your birthright. You were perceived, conceived, and delivered in it. And so it is your birthright to remain within it for every breath that you take. But we have been habitually bombarded with this message of, and I'm going to go back to this fire and ice concept. And what I love about fire and ice is that hot and cold, when we just look at it at that elemental way and we think about these man-made things like metal. Metal gets hot, it gets fluid. Metal gets cold, it gets rigid. If metal expands and contracts too much, it gets brittle and it breaks. And so this is what happens to us when we're riding this roller coaster, right? As you know from your own experience, we have what in the past the narrative is always called breakdowns, and then we convert that to a breakthrough, and we say that breakdown built me up to be here. You know, what I think you and I are really offering is that I know what I'm offering and I know how you live your life because we've been together for a few years now, right? Is that it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be on the mind bender roller coaster. You can just be like, no, that's not mine. I'm not investing in that anymore. I'm choosing to invest in myself. And I think that that was a huge moment for you because you did have all of these things of contrast and you caught yourself going, wait, I'm creating this shit. I don't want to create this anymore. I'm getting off this roller coaster. I'm fully investing in myself. I'm going to start inner sourcing. And I really think that that is something that is so potent about being in a container with people who are living that. They're not just talking about it. There isn't just narrative about it, but it's embodied. Because embodied wisdom becomes knowledge that you can share, right? It's not just words that you're like, oh, I hope this works.
Yeah, my heat just kicked on. Is it loud?
I hear it, but I can still hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I, yeah, I feel like there's this way where I feel like the thing that has driven me, and I know that this is, and I know it's true for you too, and then we'll circle back to you, is like the thing that has driven me for so long is I don't want these to just be words. I want to be embodied in the teachings that whatever the teachings are, whether it's I'm leading a 60-minute yoga class or whether it's a post on Instagram or whether it is something that I'm holding space for with a client, I remember this like drive, like that's been present for a really long time where it's like I want if someone were to walk into my marriage right now and were to listen to me talking to my husband, or someone were to walk into motherhood right now and were to listen to me talking to my 2-year-old, or just watch me, or they were to listen to me talk to you or to my business partner, Lindsay, who's also my best friend, or my dad or my mom or whoever it is, whoever's in that inner circle, I want to not just be congruent in what I'm teaching or embodied in what I'm teaching in those spaces, but more congruent and more embodied than I ever am when I'm standing in front of a group that I don't know. And there can be like a level of perfectionism that can creep in around that. So like that's not what I'm talking about because it's like the space to be human and the space to be vulnerable and the space to let it be messy and to be imperfect as well. Which I think I know that you bring into the way you hold space, and I know I bring into the way that I hold space, where it's like, I'm just being me. But yeah, I mean, there's this way where what I have seen to be true, we were talking about outsourcing versus self-sourcing. And what I have seen to be true is that a lot of people are even outsourcing their power to the modalities they use, or to the things that they teach, or to the relationships they have, or to society, or to motherhood, or whatever it is. They're making that thing more of an authority in their life than they're making themselves an authority. Which, if you're in a relationship like that with whatever it is, whether it's an inanimate object or an idea or an ideology or whatever, if it's built on codependency, how could it ever support you in full union? Like, how could it ever support you in full freedom or full congruency with your desires if it's built on sovereignty, meaning that it's sourced through your own knowing, and then the relationship comes from that place, then the frequency of it is different. So I'm curious, what have you been your blind spots around this subject? Because I walked into container with you feeling like I was investing in this because I was going through a change and I was ready for the breakthrough of the change. But really feeling like I already was embodied in my teachings. I already was congruent in who I was being. It's like I didn't think that I didn't know what I didn't know. And a lot of the work with you over the past 2 years has been cleaning up these subtle energy layers and seeing my blind spots in a new way because in my mind, I kind of already made it. Um, and not to say that I wasn't in the energy of a student, but there wasn't necessarily looking back. I was not walking in this level of intimacy that I'm walking now. So I'm curious, like how you landed where you are as far as like the way you move through relationships, because I know that this is the most unique mentorship experience I've ever had with anybody.
Oh,
And
thank you for that. I'm so moved right now. I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. Thank you for that. How did I get here? A big part of it is I had mentioned to you, and I've mentioned to anyone that asked, that I had a mentor that I worked with every single day for 36 months. It was literally like, imagine someone with a microscope peeling the onion. And then I did the rest of my life as well. It wasn't like I'm spending 8 hours a day on self development and a few hours a day over here working. I had a very thriving yoga center. I was teaching 5 different training tracks, each one 6 to 8 months long. I mean, I was a busy lady. I was married at the time. I was very involved in my community. I was very involved with lots of charity things, travel. So I was quote unquote busy. But what I started noticing is that a lot of that busyness was building inside of a framework of not maintaining the the integrity of how I really am on the inside. And so I knew that there was something on the inside that I had not completely unlocked. Or, unlocked is what my mentor used to say, but it was really just I hadn't asked the right question. I hadn't had the right key to unlock the door. And the doors are all, I'm using a metaphor, but it's all in here already. But until that key comes into your consciousness, you might be trying to go through the wrong door. There's no wrong doors, but you're forcing something, right? You're pinching the flow of your own ability to have your own revelations. And for myself, I had gotten to a point where, much like you were saying, right? I love how everything that we have in our life is this opportunity for us. You were like, I was successful. I had everything was going on for you, but there's still something, and you felt it. And so that's what happened for me as well. I felt like there was still something that wasn't quite aligned. I could just feel it. We could almost call it like an internal sense of discontent with self, not my life. Just there was something I wasn't loving about myself. And so, I worked with this mentor, and then just the timing of things is crazy. My husband died the same year that my husband died. Within 30 days, that mentor came to me and said, "It's time. We're done." Like they just canceled the relation, not canceled it, but just said, "You got to do this," and kind of kicked me out of the nest, so to speak. Right. So that felt like another, initiation of death in a way as well, because there had been this very intense everyday relationship. And what happened as I started navigating that was like, oh, I get it. I get what my mentor just did, because I was using my mentor like an easy button, like the Office Depot easy button. I wasn't actually self sourcing. Holy shit, I just got called so hard, and it was so beautifully gentle. The timing was shit. But at the same time, that's how we feel in the ego, right? The ego is often like, oh my God, the timing of this. Oh my God, this. Oh my God, that. And the fine point of all of it, Aria, for myself, and I think for all of us when we're in our human, is that we want to control things because it brings the illusion of safety, and safety allows us to feel comfortable. And the moment we being human, and I want everyone who's watching this now, everyone who hears this later, I want you to understand that being in a human form is one of the greatest gifts you will ever experience, because it is the ultimate gateway to transcendent consciousness. But part of that is investing in your humanity, not being a victim of your humanity, investing in it, allowing things to flow through you, even things that you don't understand with your mind. Right? That's why I love Kundalini yoga. You brought up yoga, and you guys know I love yoga. I've been doing it forever, and I've been teaching it for over 26 years now, which blows my mind. But Kundalini yoga, I'm madly in love with, because it takes the consciousness that you have, it uses it like a technology, and it shifts it to where you're ready to go. And all of that can happen in minutes, in moments, with breath, body, sound, mind, heart. They all come together. And what I realized, Arya, in that control part was that I had spent so much of my life in my head and not in the body, which is why I've always been drawn to like sports, physical practices, yoga, exercise, all these things that would get me in my body, because the body is a portal, and it's your portal to understanding how you can have levels and layers and dimensions of intimacy with yourself and others that are so far beyond your mind that until you're in that experience, it just seems like a pipe dream, right? I know that you said this, like
Yeah.
we've said this before, like some people, they watch your life from the outside and they think it can't be real. And it's real. I'm living it. Come
It's
on, hang out
better.
with yeah, come
The
hang out
real
anytime you
the
want.
real life is better than the thing they're watching. But for
And the
most people,
thing,
it's the opposite. For most people, the thing that they're posting is actually better than their life they're living, which is that flipped kind of dynamic of sourcing from outside instead of sourcing from inside.
yeah, it's that polarity game again, right? High, low. I'm going to post when I'm high. I'm going to post when I'm low. I'm going to post when I'm high. I'm going to post when I'm low.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you're in contentment, when you're in balance or congruency or alignment, whatever language you like, what you're doing then is you're not posting trying to drive metrics attention or anything like that. Instead, you're sharing for the benefit of all, inclusive of yourself. And this allows you to start creating a container of consciousness in which you are elevating every single person you're engaging with. And so are you being elevated because it's a collaboration.
And
That's
because
what,
there's consistency, there
yeah,
is like a consistent, the dominant frequency of your life isn't roller coaster, it's equilibrium. It's not this like bullshit balance where we think everything's perfect. It's the frequency of balance inside of ourselves. And what I love about this story, I think I just understood that the gift of you working with that mentor every day for the first time in like a new way. There's when we're walking into like embodied femininity, it's really unlocking all the archetypes of woman. So there's maiden, which is like our youthful, childish, playful self, who for most of us is not so playful because she doesn't have her basic needs met: love, safety, and belonging. And then there's the mother archetype, which is the version of us that births reality, that knows how to wield life force to create things, which for most of us is not integrated because our needs aren't met. And then the crone, which is our embodied wisdom. This is like, the later years as far as age goes, but she lives in us all the time, which is like our access to our ancient remembrance of who we are, what we came here to do, and that higher level consciousness that we all carry. And for most of us, she's not embodied because our needs aren't met. And so because how could we have relationship to our wisdom if we are like clawing, we're trying to keep ourselves in this like 13-year-old body of perfection? I mean, society is trying to like, you know, only celebrate the airbrushed perfection, but not the real fucking woman. and all of her expressions. And so the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I feel like the passion of my work is, how do we get the maiden fucking integrated? How do we get her needs met so that the rest of our womanhood can come online? Because there are 70-year-old women that are still living like 13-year-olds emotionally, because they don't have love, they don't have safety, and they don't have belonging inside of their own technology, in their subconscious, in their emotional body. They're still trying to source from outside of them. And I have noticed that for a lot of the women who aren't mothers, like actual, like birth a child, the reason why that kind of forces your hand, if you want to be a good mom, that forces your hand, because you literally cannot hide from yourself. You can't, I mean, if you want to be a good mom, there's no turning it off. You got to show up even when you don't want to, day in and day out. It doesn't matter if you're sick, doesn't matter if you're fucking over it. You got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, not in the unintegrated way, but in the like, I'm going to lead myself through this because I've got somebody else that depends on me. And I have noticed you carry like such an integrated mother energy. Like, there are very few people I work with that aren't mothers, because they're still hiding from themselves and I can feel it and they can't fully hold me, right? And I have always been curious about you, because I'm like, God, she just like is so, like, she is mama. Like, it doesn't matter that she doesn't have kids. She is carrying the codes of integrated matriarchal maternal energy. Where did she get that from? Because it's like a curiosity of mine, is like, how do we unlock this across all circumstances? Because there's so many of my clients who don't want to become moms, or who that's not their path in this life. So how do we unlock that key code of integrated feminine leadership, of being able to wield our life force without having birthed a child, even though birthing a child is a magical initiation. And it's, if it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what life you've lived, it doesn't matter what experiences you've walked through, you can continue to hide from yourself in very strategic ways, unless you decide to stop hiding from yourself.
Yeah.
And the maiden, she orients her world, and I'm talking about the maiden as in the youthful part of us who may or may not have had her needs met, that is, for most of us, still running the show because her needs are not met. You you can orient your life, you can be married to somebody and still orient your life in a way where you have certain things locked up behind closed doors and you threw away the key and you're not showing them to anyone. You could also be living by yourself, and it's even easier to lock those things up and not let people see all of you, and not even let you see all of
Yeah.
you.
Feel
And
intense separation from self, right? The ultimate space of intimacy is here first. Everything else goes from that. So I love that you brought this up about the
and I
maiden.
I think it's, you and I are rare birds in the sense that we would actually put ourselves in a space where someone could see all the fucking messy shit and witness that, because we want so much to be in integrity with ourselves forever. We want the continual like growth and integrity in that way. However, most people are so afraid of being seen, or of not being, of what if somebody sees all of me and they don't love me anymore? Or what if they see, because I'm like, look at that. That's funny. I didn't know that was there. That doesn't mean anything about me. Let's let that go. I'm like super transparent about my shit, but I don't make it mean anything about me. But for someone who's so afraid of being seen, getting into a space of embodied sovereignty, of, and when I say sovereignty, I mean, okay, so if we're talking about intimacy, let's define some things here. Intimacy is being in relationship with the innermost parts of you, the innermost truth of you or of somebody else. That requires vulnerability.
Mhm.
Sovereignty is being in an interdependent relationship with life instead of a codependent relationship with one. And so for the woman who wants ease, she's got to unlock intimacy and sovereignty. There's no way around it. But if her biggest fear is being seen, which is generally the biggest fear of the maiden, because in the past, she's asked for her needs to be met and somebody hasn't shown up for her, or she's been rejected, or she's been abandoned, or she's or she got born into a fucking shit family that didn't actually support her and bolster her biggest truth. We How does she, from your perspective, how does that woman, and I probably have my own perspective, but now I'm asking you, how does she move out of victimhood with her life so that she can step into sovereignty if her biggest fear is being seen? Because that's going to be her cock block. And that's also going to be why she's going to be intensely magnetized to this retreat we're creating, but also want to keep it at arm's length. Because
Yeah,
this
I
is the breakthrough of that. Like, she can't walk out of this retreat not being connected to her, like, her purest sense of womanhood.
yeah, and I think for me, like the way that I navigated a lot of what you're talking about as far as that unintegrated maiden was, and then again, a little bit of an my grandmother used to call me the odd bird, and so I have always looked for mentors who are going to be like, hey, this is what's going on, hey, here's where you're hiding, hey, like because I don't want to waste my time. Life is so short and it's so sweet, and I want to live in the sweetness, not in the asinine construct of like you've got to suffer for success. That's not my reality. I'm not investing in that. I'm not going to help other people invest in that, because I believe it's a false reality where people are coding your consciousness so that they can control your essence for their benefit, not yours. Right? That's why I am such a proponent of sovereignty and inner sourcing, and really walking with intimacy of self. And the way I really navigated that was, why do I want to control that? Where do I want to control it? Why do I want to control it? What is it giving me to feel like I'm in control of that? And even bigger than that was like, why am I afraid of that? Where's that fear coming from? Is that my fear? Is that someone else's fear? Do I actually believe that fear? Does that fear actually serve me in any way? And know, I think a big part of me took that tack because I went to school for anthropology. I've been studying, like, literally the study of human beings. I've been studying humanity for a really long time, and I've been studying myself for a really long time, because I was one of those women that grew up in a family that just kind of like kicked you to the curb and was like, figure your shit out. And I knew that what I saw wasn't congruent with how I was designed. And that was my journey. Like, that doesn't feel right. I know that what I feel is what I feel and that it's real. So I got to find people who can help me understand how to tap into this, because this is my truth. This is the thing that I can own. This is the thing that I can take with me when this body is no more. This is real. And keep coming back to when those patterns come up in your life. Like, you know, you mentioned the woman that this retreat is for, and this retreat is for the woman who wants to be seen, and she's tired of investing in things that don't actually allow her to be a woman, but instead are asking her to look like a woman, be like a Barbie doll, and walk in a world like the man. That's not going to work, because that is the unintegrated maiden. That is someone who's not fiercely mothering themselves, because I am here to fiercely mother humanity to awaken to a new layer, level, and dimension of grace and goodness in their existence. And most importantly, that's not someone standing in their power, right?
Yeah.
And this retreat is a container for you to recognize and realize the potential of your power, which is through that self-source sovereignty. And
It's not even like walking like a man, it's walking like an unintegrated man. It's not even like the purest form of being a man. It's literally just control
yeah,
and
but
all
then
the
doesn't
subtle ways.
male aspect to be the male, right? Like, it's so convoluted, and until we start calibrating and clearing our consciousness, it then can ripple effect into everything, into our reality, right? But this can be one of the rubs with some people, is they want to be seen, but they would rather have the drama of being not seen than the clarity and the ease of being seen.
They would rather be in the drama of like, "Oh, I want this thing, but it's not choosing me. Why isn't it choosing me? God, I want my business to do well. I want this financial success, but God," it's like they're more comfortable and regulated to that. And I would say if I'm answering the question I just asked you, how did I get over the fear of being seen?
Yeah.
I got over the fear of being seen because I was literally holding space for my 53-year-old stepfather who got a sudden diagnosis and left his body a month to the day from that diagnosis. And I was watching him look back on a half lived life. I was watching him look back on a life where he was like, God, I never went and did that trip. I never went and did this thing. And I was also watching him scramble to say all the I'm sorries and to say all the things that he held back saying and to like cry all the tears that he pretended like he didn't feel. And to like, in some ways it was so beautiful that he had that time because we, he died at peace, even though he didn't have the experiences necessarily that he would have wanted to have. He died having like the most vulnerability and the most love and the most courage I've ever seen him express in that 1 month time, just heart wide open, also frustrated and all the things as well. But
Of course.
I I've read that book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bonnie Ware. Like I too have been a student of humanity pretty much since I came out of the womb. And for me that was like the study of language and the study of culture, and then became the study of religion, and then became the study of the subconscious mind and all of the things that filter our perception of reality. And that book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, I remember reading it like little and then high school and then like constantly. And the number one regret of the dying is I wished I had had the courage to live a life that was true to me rather than the life everyone wanted. And I'm sitting here watching my stepdad just literally no symptoms. He had no symptoms, and all of a sudden, boom, he can't swallow his food. They find stage 4 metastasized esophagus cancer. And then 4 weeks later, that's it, last breath. And I made a promise to myself, like, and in the moment of death, which like I've had many experiences with death in the last since then, um, in a moment of death, all the bullshit excuses and all the things that aren't actually a priority, they fall away and you're left with what's real and what actually matters. And so in that like clear spaciousness of like, whew, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, don't have time for that, don't have time to think that thought, I'm going to be here and be present for this moment because this is the only moment I have, which is always true. But we live in this illusion that time is, that we live in this weird actually fire and ice relationship with time where we're like, I never have enough of it, but I'm not going to take my time seriously, like I have forever, and I'll do that later. And so in that moment I was like, no, I'm going to look back on a life whenever, if I get in a car, I literally was like, I want to live each day so fully that if I were to die in a car accident tomorrow, I would be satisfied with what I had created. And then if I have the experience of looking back at my life the way that he did, now my heat's turning on again. I'm not going to turn it off though because it's actually very cold outside, and I don't have pants on. um, but I said, I'm going to literally, what do I need to become? What do I need to move through? What do I need to integrate? What do I need to release in order to open my heart fully to life? Because the only way I'm going to look back on my life and be happy and feel like I lived every single drop of it is to let go of everything I'm afraid to lose. Because as long as I'm protecting what I'm afraid to lose, I'm cutting myself off from taking the risk or opening my heart or doing the thing that I need to do in order to have that like wide open. Like my dad wrote this poem when my grandmother died. I would think I was like 7 or 8 when she died. And he was talking about living life with your heart open with reckless abandon. And that has become a mantra of my life. Like, what does it mean to live with my heart? Like, not reckless in the sense of like
Like,
dangerous, but reckless in the
yeah,
sense
not
of like,
reckless sense of careless, but almost like Hafiz or, Rumi, where it's like just this reckless abandon of the devotion to a life lived in presence and joy and in the now, because the now is all we have. And I love that you brought that to the forefront about, the path that you've walked and how that has shaped you living more fully in the present. And really that this beauty of, I think in the last video, I talked a little bit about my late husband passing and how I told myself every time it hurt, I was going to lean in. And I imagined, like, I would imagine, a lot of times when we see a weapon, we like back away. And I would just be like, oh, that's like a sword and it hurts here. And I would just lean in because it was me taking ownership of like the pain, because that pain pleasure principle, whether you're conscious of it or not, it drives most of your aversions, and it fuels a lack of intimacy because you're afraid to get hurt. And so when you can see those things that people have, and again, Grant had like 7 months, so he got to do some things kind of like your stepfather did, right? Where he like had a little bit of time to look at things. And there's grace in that gift of that time. And the gift to you and your experience and me and my experience was that it's like, oh no, I'm not going to live my life like this. I don't need to do this. And this is not what I want for people in my orbit. It's not what I want for people in any aspect. I want to help them understand that you can be on the other side of this and have a level and dimension of intimacy with yourself that sets the standard for source to flow in every single relationship you ever have. But it has to start here. And if you're scared of yourself, you're scared of living your life, then there's a lack of intimacy. There's a lack of reckless abandon with you, right? And it's one of my favorite things about working with you, Aria, is that you do have this reckless abandon of loving yourself. And like you said, you're like, show me my shit, show me where it is, which is another point of great congruence between us, because I was like that and I still am. I'm like, oh, that's my shit. Oh, I don't need that anymore. Next. And then it's gone. I don't have to keep coming back to the narrative. Yeah, it's like next, done, over. I'm a big fan. You use the feather, brick, or semi. I'm a big fan of the feather.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the feather now after I got my ass kicked for 5 years. I'm not available for those 18-wheelers anymore. Yeah, I really feel like at the core of this, it is understanding the pleasure pain duality. Most people are like craving what they think is what they want and then having their hand out to what they think they don't want. Yep. My path over the past 5 years in literally like bearing a child and bearing my stepdad and almost bearing my second child and almost dying myself and all the crazy shit that went down over the past 5 years where death was like, you're gonna learn this lesson until we're done here. Because I was choosing to be stubborn, is I had to learn that lesson so hard because I was in resistance to the lesson. I was in resistance to the pain. I was in resistance to the grief. And so about 2 years ago, me and my best friend, who is my business partner, we started saying, what is the thing I know I must do that I least want to do? I'm afraid of something. That means I have something that I'm afraid to lose. I'm going to let go of everything I'm afraid to lose. And what is the thing I don't want to do? What is the thing, the last thing I want to do? I'm going to choose to do that. So in our business partnership, when she wanted to be right and I wanted to be right, we both said, what is the thing I know I must do that I least want to do? It's drop the ego and understand the other person's model of the world, which when you want to be right, you don't want to understand the person's model of the world. You want to be right. So we would drop our model of the world and we would step into each other's model of the world. And it was like, it was so hard in these moments because before we like fully just got used to this dynamic, because it felt like the most unsafe thing to do. But what I have found to be true is we're so afraid of being seen and we're so afraid of being rejected. And that only can take place when we're in resistance, when our ego, when we're in judgment, when we are in like the hierarchy of the need to be right or the need to be whatever. But when I drop into the reckless abandon of dropping my ego and stepping into somebody else's model of the world and deeply understanding them and deeply seeing them, they never push away from me. No matter how tense or conflicted the conversation is, I always find harmony and understanding and resolution, unless they're like a sociopath or a psychopath. Every person, if you're willing to drop into their model of the world, if you're willing to open your heart with reckless abandon in that situation, which is the last thing you want to do, because we've been programmed that it's not safe, but it's actually the safest thing to do
So,
because it connects us
yep.
to each other.
Oh,
They say, oh, you want to love me unconditionally? Okay, I'll love you. Let's go.
let's go.
But as long as we're in that resistance, we're in conditional love.
Yep.
And we respond to ourselves that way. And so it's like, what is the thing I know I must do that I least want to do? I mean, when I walked into this container, the thing I knew I must do that I least wanted to do was like take full responsibility for I was in the space of like, God, the hard lessons just keep coming, just one after the other after the other. Like, when are they going to stop? But I wasn't taking responsibility for the hard lessons yet. So I stepped into this container to have you hold me to taking responsibility for my part of the dramatic shit show I was creating. I created a lot of magic during that time as well, but I was also really vested in the story of like how hard it was, because it was hard and I was tired, and I wanted, I, as you have said to me many times, it was about my relationship to being on earth in a body with a mission. And I wanted it to be so hard that I could give myself an out. Well, it got too hard. Fuck that earth place. I'm out. And oh, cool. This is just what I needed to make myself feel good about, like, leaving this ghetto ass place and going back to where I came from. Like, could somebody on a spaceship come pick me up? Like, I kept saying that for a while. And that I find to be true for almost every spiritual person on this planet, healer, yogi, whatever. They are like in resistance to earth. They are in resistance to this experience that they signed up for. And they're looking for some sort of way to be like, all right, that's it, last straw. Like almost like what is it, like an honorable discharge? They want an honorable discharge from this experience, when really they signed up for this experience to literally help everyone break out of this experience, because that's what we're here for. But it feels intense to go first.
Yeah, I love that you said that. You signed up for it, and then it makes me want to come back to that idea of, what's you had said, you and Lindsay, like, what is the thing that I least want to do? And for myself, it was, I just had to ask myself, in a state of conflict or that which didn't feel in flow, am I bringing a sense of I want to be right, or am I bringing love to the table? If I just think of all of us at the table in this experience, even an ethereal, energetic table, in this experience, am I trying to be right, which creates resistance, or am I bringing love, which creates flow? Because everything is in a flow state all the time. So the
Do I
more,
want to be right, or do I want to be rich?
yeah, right? Like, do I want to be this way, or do it? So again, we come back to where we started the conversation, which is this heavy investment in contrast. And it's really simple. That unconditional love is, by divine design, your birthright, in which you can walk every single day in every single way, which means sovereignty, health, money, wealth, however you define it. I think of money as just an aspect of wealth. I think health is our ultimate wealth, and then money flows from that.
I
Those,
think contentment is our ultimate wealth.
amen.
And being able to look at whatever's going on the external and have an unwavering internal sense of contentment inside of you and peace, that's wealth, baby.
Yeah,
because
and that,
you're not codependent with your relationship to life at all.
and it's that is the ultimate form of intimacy, is being able to sit in that. There's a beautiful Sanskrit word for this, which is santosha. Santosha is contentment. Being able to sit, and that word sa, it means source, right? That's a very simplified way for me to put it. But being able to sit in the seat of source inside of yourself as if though you were walking through your days like this, right? That doesn't need contrast. That doesn't need stress management. That doesn't need polarity. That doesn't need for you to have highs and lows. And I think that that is true intimacy. And I love that you said that about contentment. Perfectly brought up.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a crazy time to be alive, and stuff is happening on the planet, and it's been happening on the planet for the last 3 years. And I think the gift of being in circle with people like us is the regulated nervous system of like, I declare all things good, and only good can come from every experience. Like, that's our MO, that's our baseline, that's our bottom line. And that is like the frequency that we're moving through life with. And so it doesn't matter if something is quote unquote good or quote unquote bad. Every single thing for us turns into a miracle, turns into a blessing, turns into an opportunity because we allow it to. You can't turn something into a blessing or an opportunity if you're in fear or stress,
Mm.
if you're in reactivity towards it. You have to be able to stand and be the witness of it. And this isn't bypassing. I mean, the amount of fears that I got to integrate of everything I was afraid to lose in order to stand here, they were big, but they didn't have to take a long time. Actually, like, the clients that I'm working with now are so ready for this work. I was so ready for this work with you, on another dimension of it, that the time is not really the thing, the indicator of it. It's the willingness to let go of the resistance. And so, like, we're leading a 5-day, 4-night retreat here. It is a perfectly reasonable goal or desire to have, to walk out of here having let go of what you're afraid to lose, because it really does get to be just like the decision that you make, and then the support to integrate it. The only reason why it takes a long time for us to change things in our lives is because of the drama and the resistance and the control. But an emotion without a story is meant to move through our bodies and our systems in 90 seconds. Why couldn't you come to this retreat and walk away like totally clear on what you want and feeling totally worthy and deserving of creating it? And like, that is, I would say that's our promise energetically, that we can't do it for you, of course, but that is like the frequency of what we're creating, and the practices and the structure that we've set for this is designed to crack life open to you this way. And so it's like, I don't know, there's this way where people live in this fire and ice relationship to what they want. Like, they live in this state of like, oh, she gets to have that. I had a different childhood, or because I live in a different place on the earth, or because I'm a mom and she's a not, or because she has a partner and I don't, or whatever the story is. And actually, it's like, whatever it is that she has that you think she gets to have that you don't, she didn't create that. She created that by being in the frequency of it first. And so if you want something, no matter what it is, you have to you have to take a break from working in your life of the day-to-day operations of the hamster wheel. And even if you aren't running on a hamster wheel, there's still the like the errands, the grunt work, the day-to-day things that got to get done. You got to take a break from doing that to work on your life. You can't design your life if you're always like all up in it. And so I feel like the value of coming here is like the soft nervous system reset. Coming here, as in coming to Cumberland Gap, coming to this retreat with us, it's like the soft nervous system reset of stepping outside of the day to day stimulus. That in itself is like an inevitable spark of passion, purpose, and clarity, because you're stepping out of being in your life to like focus on what you want. But it's also the fact that the calibration of the frequency of what you want, the ability to like divert the inertia of your life and create a new timeline. As you say, space is the container for all transformation. And if we're in the running the household, taking care of the kids, running the business, running the errands, cooking our meals, like driving to work, like whatever the stimulus is that we're doing, we could fill every single moment of our day up with a stimulus. And unless we pause the stimulus and take a step back and cultivate spaciousness between whatever the inertia of our life is, even if the inertia is great, but we want more, to create the space to like get clear on the new thing and then become that. Like that's the only way change can happen in our lives, but change can happen very quickly if we just create that space and choose it.
Yeah, because that's us embodying the frequency of desire, right? And desires are simply unmanifested states of consciousness. They're ready. Desires are ready to be in an embodied state. They just haven't manifested yet because there hasn't been a congruency of frequency. There hasn't been a frequential alignment, as I say. And so what's happening when you create space for yourself is that you are banking that frequency and magnetizing that which you desire, which is so powerful because that is the potency of passion, the ultimate passion of intimacy with self. Because what it's doing is allowing you to tap into the codes of your unique universe as the universe deemed it so, right? And I just think that's, yeah, I know this is going to be super special. I'm loving these conversations. When are we doing another one this Thursday or is it next Thursday?
Well, let's do another one this Thursday if we've
Yeah.
got space for it, but we can play with that. But yeah, I think the last metaphor for this before we kind of close it up is like, if you want to have like an orgasm, if you want to have amazing sex with somebody, imagine what that's like. We've all been in an experience where we're trying to have sex and our minds are running the to do list, or we're rushing the orgasm. Like, no magic is going to take place there. It's just not going to happen. You're not even there. You're distracted. You kind of are ready to just like get it done. Um, but if you're able to be in the spaciousness of just like the space is carved out, you're just there and you're present. You're like in the moment to moment experience of what's alive. Like, even if the outcome of that is doesn't take place, the experience is so like pleasurable because you're there for all of the little moments of it. And so often we actually miss, and this isn't just about sex, this is about being in sensuality with our lives. Like the wind blowing on our skin can be a sensual experience. Like hugging someone we love can be a sensual experience. Everything, it's just about your experience through the senses, and the body's always in the present moment. And so the sensory experience is always happening now. And we miss the moment in front of us so often because we're running on the day-to-day operation hamster wheel. And yeah, I love these conversations too. So we're just going to straight up say that if you are enjoying these conversations, we believe that you're meant to come here and create a beautiful 5-day experience with us. So we want to straight up say we are inviting you to come on this retreat. And if you want the details or you want to have a call with either one of us to talk about what that looks like and explore that, we would love to create that space. And then, yeah, we're going to have more conversations like
Yeah.
this.
Not to mention the conversations that are going to happen at the retreat are going to be like paradigm shifting, quantum leaping. So good.
So good. Well, thank you for this space, Akasha and Mila.
Thank you so much, Arya Jaidara. It's such an honor to always be in your presence. Thank you guys so much for watching. It'll be in my feed, Arya's feed, if I can figure out the tech. And then I'm also going to host it on my YouTube channel and send out a newsletter. So be sure to get on my newsletter, Arya's newsletter as well, which you can get from her page. And this is Teddy T Bear, and he's like, time to go outside, sweet people.
Well, see you later.
Bye.
Love you.
You.